everyone who joined us today. Thank you so much. My name is Trina Shanks. I'm Director of Community Engagement at the University of Michigan School of Social Work. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I'm wearing glasses, have curly hair, and a black jumper with a black and white scarf. A note about accessibility: if you hit CC or show subtitles, you can see activate the caption to come at the bottom of the screen. And if you are distracted by having a lot of faces at one time, you can click in the upper right corner and toggle between gallery view and speaker view, so you can just see the person who's talking. And I'm really excited about our session today. We're going to talk about grand challenges, extreme economic inequality, and how we can use this mechanism to galvanize social workers across the country and help build economic security within all communities and hopefully guarantee greater access to basic needs. But I'd like to start. Oh, and a brief note to students who are in the Engaged Community class and panelists, just make sure you stay after for the brief debrief after the formal presentation ends. But we always start with the brief land and labor acknowledgement. Engage is aware that we function in a society that has a deep history of exploitation, stealing land and labor that has affected our Indigenous and Black communities for generations. And so we're committed to, every time we have an event, to acknowledge this in everything we do and use our work together to create a more inclusive tomorrow. So we take a few minutes to allow you to read our land and labor acknowledgement. So take a few minutes to read it. Thank you so very much. I'd like to now introduce the Engage team. Next slide, please. So we have Sonia Harb, Aisha Ghazi Edwin, Fatima Salman, and our three wonderful interns, Leslie Long, Cleo, and Annika Spurl. So if you want to learn more about other webinars we've done or anything that we're doing with part of the Engage team, our website is here on the slides, and I think it's going to be dropped in the chat. So I guess I'll hand it over to to Aisha to introduce me, and then we'll get on with the panel.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Aisha Ghazi Edwin. I use the pronoun she, hers. I'm wearing a blue shirt, and we just do that for accessibility purposes because it translates into the transcript. So I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing our amazing facilitator today, Dr. Trina Shanks. She's a Harold R. Johnson Collegiate Professor and the Director of Community Engagement here at the School of Social Work. She's also a faculty associate of the Survey Research Center and the Institute for Social Research. So just to tell you a little bit about her background, because she does a lot of research in this area on the topic we're talking about today, her research interests include the impact of poverty and wealth on child well-being, asset building policy and practice across the life cycle, and community and economic development. She's a founding director of the Center for Equitable Family Community Wellbeing, where she promotes win-win research and intervention projects and seeks opportunities that empower families and communities to thrive. So something that we're going to be talking about today is the grand challenges of social work practice and extreme economic inequality. And Trina focuses her work and her research on this. And she's currently one of the national network co-leads for these grand challenges, reversing extreme economic inequality. So with that, I am going to hand it off to our facilitator, Dr. Trina Shanks.
Thank you, Aisha. And so next slide, please. Yeah, perfect. So about 6 years ago, the American Academy for Social Work and Social Science kind of launched the Social Work Grand Challenges. They wanted to be social progress powered by science. They wanted to harness all of the work that social workers throughout the country were doing and the knowledge base they were building in some of these key areas, and use that to inform policy, education, and practice. They wanted to collaborate with individuals and community-based organizations and professionals across all fields. And they wanted to actually use this social progress powered by science to tackle some of our toughest social problems, what they call grand challenges, building off of grand challenges in engineering and that other countries have been doing. And so we started out with 12 grand challenges. but because there was a lot of debate about whether racism should be infused in all of them or be its own separate challenge. And about 2 years ago, they decided to actually create a 13th challenge, eliminating racism, which you see at the top. And you can see they go from the very micro, ensuring healthy development for youth and closing health gaps, to more meso, like ending homelessness.
Yes, 77 degrees in the house.
And,
Bro, cut that heat off.
and having social responses
It's
to
from-
the
it's from the,
changing environment. Can we put mute? Thank you. And then harnessing technology for good, and then some that are much more macro, like the ones we're talking about today. So achieving equal opportunity and justice, building financial capability and assets for all, and then reducing extreme economic inequality. And so that's one of the ones I lead. And so we'll go to the next slide to talk a little bit more about that. So if you're actually interested, this little webpage is our webpage talking about all the things we've been doing lately on reducing extreme economic inequality. But one way to think about this is how the US compares to other OECD or wealthy countries. And so this is called the Gini coefficient. So if one person held all the wealth and resources, it'd be 1. And if it was evenly distributed, it'd be 0. And so the higher you get on the Gini coefficient, the more unequal it is. And you can see that some of the Scandinavian countries and even Germany are lower on this scale, but the United States is one of the highest. And so this quote I think is great from Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. We can either have democracy in this country or we can have great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few. We can't have both. And so as we'll see in the next slide, we've been going in the direction of greater inequality, which I think means we're going away from greater democracy. Next slide. So when you think about how economic inequality is shifted over time, next slide. Yeah, go back to the 2 graphs. Thank you. So income inequality, if you look at the top share of 1%, the highest point was right just before the stock market crash and the whole economic downturn in the 20s and 30s. So it was almost 24%. And then at the low, just before our economic downturn with the oil embargo and oil crisis in the 70s, it went down to like a third of that. So from 24% to about 9%. But over the last 20 years, since the 80s and 90s, it's been creeping up again, and it's almost as high now. And if you look at 2020 data, it's 20%. So it's almost as high as it was during those extreme times in the 20s and 30s. And so when we say extreme economic inequality, that's what we mean. It was going down for a while, but income inequality is beginning to go back up. So that means those at the top are getting more and more and more income, and those at the bottom are stagnant. And then if you look at wealth, you'll notice this is the top 1%, this is the top 1/10 of 1%. And so again, during that time in the 20s and 30s, it was at a peak, started to go down, and over the last 2 or 3 decades, it started to go up again. So the top 1/10 of 1% has almost a quarter of the net worth or wealth in this country. So again, lots of money and power and resources and wealth concentrated at the top and not much going toward the bottom. And that's what we're gonna spend time talking about today. Next slide, please. And so when we were thinking about a policy recommendation, we divided it into the income side and the asset side. And one thing I want to note is we were doing these policy recommendations in 2017, 2018. And actually a lot of these things have either been passed into law or have been tried in pilots. And so none of these are pipe dreams, hopefully, the things that maybe we can sustain over time. But if you're looking at increasing earnings, things like increasing the minimum wage, things like universal basic income, so that everyone gets a small amount every month, regardless of whether they're working or not. And then what other countries do have this child allowance. So anyone who has children under a certain age can get a monthly increase in their income. And as we'll see later, in the US, we almost always go through the tax code. So we've had the earned income tax credit. And at least as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, we had at least a temporary increase in child tax credits. And actually our grand challenge had a whole bunch of social workers, over 200, sign a letter supporting sustaining the child tax credit that we sent to Congress. And so lots of things around increasing the money that people get. There's also this idea of active employment creation, some sort of guaranteed, guaranteed job of last resort. And that's something that often happens in other countries. And that's something that we could think about doing here. After World War II and with the New Deal, there were a lot of government created jobs around things like infrastructure and building our national parks. We also could think about the type of work that people have and the work conditions. So having part-time work, shift and variable work that's stable and humane and doesn't steal money from workers, what we call kind of wage theft. Also expanding childcare to make it possible for people who have young children to be able to work. And then strengthening unemployment insurance. These are all things on the income side. And again, there's been pilots and policies that have been passed in these areas, but we want them to be sustained and available for all. Next slide, please. Now, wealth is a little tougher because again, you have people at the bottom who have zero net worth, are in debt, and then you have people who have billions and billions of dollars. And so figuring out how to decrease that inequity is a little tougher. But right now in the US, depending on how much wealth and income you have, it really determines the kind of human capital and education you're able to return. Not because you're smart, not because you do well on tests, but just the basic economics that your household has is a much better predictor of, let's say, if you graduate from high school and go on to college, than your ability. And so we'd like to be able to reduce the role of income and wealth on educational attainment so that all people can live up to their highest potential. In the US too, income that comes from capital, so things that you're investing in and businesses, you get a lot better tax returns and a lot more perks than if you work. And so again, can we shift the tax code? Can we shift policy so that people who earn a living through labor aren't disadvantaged from those who get their money through capital? There's lots of federal and sometimes state subsidy for people for retirement and housing, but it almost always goes to those at the top of the income distribution. And so the question is, rather than giving people a tax write-off for their second home, can we provide some money for people who are renting? Rather than only providing retirement subsidies for people who are already saving in these tax shelters, maybe we could find some way to provide down payments or initial deposits for low-income families that don't have any wealth at the moment, help them grow wealth. I've been part of a coalition that spends time thinking about creating a lifelong policy for inclusive and progressive wealth building, beginning with things like child development accounts. Again, this doesn't exist throughout the country yet, but there's 7 or 8 states that are going in this direction. And there's definitely countries that are doing this. And then there's some who have even bolder proposals. Cory Booker and others have proposed baby bonds, and then other people have proposed reparations. So again, these don't quite exist yet, but there are ideas that are out there that could change the scope of wealth and inequality in this country. So I will stop there. Next slide, though. I'd like to spend a little time just saying that there's advocates on the ground throughout the country finding ways to work on these issues, to bring greater economic inequality, to bring resources to those at the bottom of income and wealth distributions. There's the Poor People's Campaign that has a national arm, but also has state leaders. There's locally the Coalition for Property Tax Justice for people who've lost their homes through not just mortgage foreclosure, but tax foreclosure. And if there are ways that the city and state can work differently with residents to help people stay in their homes. So there's all sorts of things happening. And I'm so excited to introduce our panelists. Next slide, please, because they're in the trenches every day doing this work. And so it's my pleasure to be able to introduce you to these amazing guests. We have Reverend Joan Ross, who's director of North End Woodward Community Coalition. We have Tim Thorlin, who is CEO of Southwest Housing Solutions Corporation. And we have Poncella Hardaway, who is executive director of Moses, which is an interfaith advocacy organization that stands for Metropolitan Organizing Strategy Enabling Strength. And so I'm going to turn it over to each of them and allow them to each take 3 to 5 minutes to introduce themselves, to say your preferred pronouns, and to help us know what you're doing to work in these areas of economic inequality. So I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind. Reverend Ross, why don't you get started?
Thank you so much, Trina. I am Reverend Joan Ross. I use she, her pronouns. My identifiers are I wear glasses, I have red hair, I have on pearls, and a white top with blue flowers in it today. So just to tell you a little bit about my organization, next slide, please. Is that where you want to use the slides? Okay. Actually, at North End Woodward Community Coalition, we don't say we do program work, we do systems change work, in that all of the work that we do has a component of workforce development involved, as well as service to community, with the intentions of community maintaining ownership of the projects. So currently, our work includes the Storehouse of Hope, which works with land justice, housing justice, and food insecurity. The Equitable Internet Initiative, which is our digital justice work. WNUC, which is the only community radio station in Detroit. We work on media justice awareness. And our Solar Detroit project, which works to provide solar solutions for 1,000 families in Detroit, works on our utility and justice in that field. So next slide, please. The slides actually just show you how all of our work intersects. We bring into each part of the work, our workforce development, as well as the solutions that we have. Currently, we provided solar to about 15 households in Detroit. This is actually on the ground roof solar for those families, and most of those are part of our community land trust work. Our food pantry today serves about 3,000 people every month. We do complete mobile deliveries and mobile pantry access. Next slide, please. Could you advance? Thank you. The solar work that we've done has been featured by National Geographic Explorers who focus on solar as solutions in community-based situations. This actually is a solar array that we've put in one of our community land trust houses on the north end. Next slide. Part of the big work that we do is our equitable internet work, our digital justice inclusion work. And currently today we have about 600 households that are receiving internet service directly from our organization. The goal of the program is to provide digital solutions for families that would normally have been left out or have been left out of the process. We found that during the pandemic, 70% of the children in Detroit did not have access to internet. And in our neighboring city of Highland Park, only 100 children could take online learning because of no access. We've worked to change that with our Internet in a Box program. A big part of the internet solutions is that we also employ 18 community people to install, maintain, and operate that network. And our income salaries start from $17 an hour to $30 an hour. So we pay above minimum wage for our jobs, with the idea of stabilizing income and money into our communities. Next slide, please. This is an old slide. As you can see, we've grown a lot in the past few months. This past week, we were able to bring a senior building online with the internet. Actually, in that building, only 5 seniors had access to the internet. We've wired that building today, and by Friday, 210 seniors will have access to the internet. A big part of the work that we do with the Equitable Internet is provide solar charging stations. We currently have 7 charging stations in operations, and the charging stations are located within community and provide for emergency power shortages or outages, as well as giving safe internet access to people who don't have access. One of the stories that we tell is during the pandemic, there was a grandma who was or is tasked with raising a 6th grader, and they had no internet. She would only have access to internet on her small data package on her cell phone. And they would actually go sit at a McDonald's or a Taco Bell where they could do his homework and have access to internet. The charging stations provide us access with internet within the community in a safe, closed network that provides for children to have ways to do homework if they don't have access to our direct serve. Next slide, please. Change the slide, please. Okay, here's what those actual charging stations look like. This one is actually in Bennett Park, a real active hotspot in the North End. The charging station is a simple solar device with a battery backup storage, and located near the picnic tables or the seating areas are the charging ports. So folks could actually sit there, charge their phones, or actually have access. This is the first generation charging stations. Our charging stations today have a full monitor access so that folks have screen access to the internet, as well as the ability to charge and just use the Wi-Fi. And that concludes the work that we do at North End Woodward Community Coalition.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we look forward to learning even more about what you do for the folks in Michigan. I'm going to turn it over to you, Tim Thorlin. Why don't you go next? And if you don't remember, it's your name, your pronoun, identifiers, and what you do.
Thank you, Trina. Good afternoon, Tim Thorland. I'm the Executive Director of Southwest Housing Solutions. I use the pronoun he, him. Identifiers, I'm wearing a blue patterned shirt, glasses, have brown hair, and got a bunch of sports memorabilia in the background if I lean over. My face is scruffy because I haven't shaved in a couple of days. A little bit about our organization's work. So Southwest Housing Solutions is the affordable housing and community development arm of a family of corporations. So Southwest Solutions is our brand. And through 3 operating organizations do a wide variety of social services. We have one organization, Southwest Counseling Solutions, that specializes in community mental health, early childhood and behavioral health, supportive housing, veteran services, and a host of social service programs. Southwest Economic Solutions, one of our other organizations, is really the individual economic arm of the organization. So helping individuals and households build financial capability and wealth through things like homebuyer counseling, financial counseling, workforce development, and other circumstances like that. And then within my corporation, like I said, we specialize in affordable housing and community development. We tend to focus the majority of our work in the city of Detroit, and more specifically in Southwest Detroit. But we do venture to other communities too, when our expertise or our capacity can help other organizations or other municipalities focus on intent issues that would help bolster their communities, especially when we're focusing on people of lower income. Our specialty over the years has been rental affordable housing. Our focus in more recent years and moving forward is a much more blended approach. Rental housing is a need that's not going away. It's estimated that just within the state of Michigan itself, we are short about 150,000 affordable housing units for folks of lesser income. A lot of that need is focused in Detroit and surrounding communities. So the need to produce affordable housing is not going to go away on the rental side. But as a company, we have decided that we will focus much more intently on a holistic community development strategy, pulling the best pieces and parts to support that from other parts of our organization, as well as bringing in collaborative partners that will also help support growth in communities. For us as a corporation, that means focusing on other areas of housing where we can apply our expertise beyond rental housing. And one of the things that I'll talk about today is the recent experience we've had in helping build home ownership for lower income and minority families. It's an important piece. It's an important piece globally as a conversation. It's an important piece for us from a couple of different perspectives. In the world of community development, rental housing has always been the fuel for building strength and depth in a community, but you can't build a community completely out of rental housing. There's got to be a mix of housing options. And while it does provide a stepping stone or a leg up for families who have difficulty accessing housing, or more specifically, accessing safe, sanitary, and quality housing, The rental housing and the affordable housing market provide access for that. But to build strength, depth, integrity, continuity in a community, you also have to approach the home ownership side of what's going on. And when you look at what's going on in neighborhoods west of downtown Detroit, I'm talking about Woodbridge and Corktown and Hubbard Richard and Hubbard Farms. Folks are getting priced out of those communities. Folks with quite moderate or high incomes are getting priced out of some of those communities, and it becomes an inclusion issue. And we have to find ways to allow folks of lesser incomes. And these are folks who are actively participating in the economic resurgence of Detroit. Think around Corktown and all of the investment that's coming into the train station area. It's estimated there's going to be upwards of 1,500 jobs where families will be making less than 80% of the area median income, or households that will earn less than $60,000 a year. And those families cannot access any of those communities I just mentioned, either in a rental or an ownership position. But as a household, they have the same desires as upper income families, where they want to be in a live, work, and play environment. And it is not, it's not fair or respectable to think that folks who are employed as waiters or waitresses or landscapers or administrative assistants or valets in the Corktown area have to, for example, live at 7 Mile and Grand River, not by choice, but by circumstance, and take the bus to work every day. When there's an ample environment of housing that we can make available for folks to participate in a live, work, and play environment, and walk to work if they would like, or bike to work if they would like, or go home for lunch. That's where we're going to be focusing our time and attention in coming years, is building accessibility and inclusivity in the affordable home ownership market, and applying the sound principles of underwriting for a mortgage based on people's individual realistic circumstances, and not just a piece of paper in a financial institution's box.
Wow, thank you so much, Tim. Pancella, I'd like to give you a chance to go ahead.
Can you put that list up on my introductions again? I think I've Pancella Hardaway, Director of Moses, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and my identifiers. Oh, you can't see me. Wait, I don't know how to make my camera close like you guys got. So I have on my green for St. Patrick's Day. I've got a little of that on, curly hair, and some kind of patterned glasses. So here I am waving my hand. So here I am. There is so much happening right now. It's like, I feel like we're under attack on multiple levels, right? And so I want to just talk a little bit about power before we get to that, power, people, and policy, right? So we're trying, the issues that we're facing right now are people who are in power. We're talking about not only politicians, we're talking about corporations. Who's really ruling what's happening in our city? I'll leave that thought with you. So I'm going to talk about power. What does it mean for us why community organizing? So I wanted to, there's advocacy because we want to push for policy, but the community organizing is the power building component that we have to really invest time in. So community organizing can be one part of overall advocacy or policy, any public policy campaign that we work on, any strategy that we're trying to address. We have to build the base of people. It's distinguished by the fact that agents of change are affected constituencies rather than paid advocates or lobbyists who attempt to represent the interests of such constituencies, right? There's a bunch of lobbyists in the ears of our public officials moving resources away from people who need it every day, which therefore causes this gap. Next slide, please. So I want to just, I'm an organizer, so we train, so this is what I do. So I'm just going to just bear with me for a minute, because I want you to understand why the work is so hard. And why we have to be committed to invest in it, right? So we have the community organizer. The community organizer focus a lot on just how do we build the power we need to confront power. Advocacy is focused on policy, right? So we want to be able to build that continuum of building a lot of power, but that balance of policy and power goes hand in hand. I know in years it was an extreme that we were going to build power to what end, right? Or we want to build policy for what? But we got to have both, given where we are right now in society. And this is our Alliance Justice for Slide, so I love this slide. Next slide. So the core goal of community organizing is to generate durable power for an organization representing the community, allowing it to influence key decision makers in a range of issues over time. This is a long haul. What we're talking about is something that's not going to happen in action. This is us investing for the next future of our generations, because if we don't fight, what are they going to be faced with, right? So this is an invitation to get into the fight, right? In the idea that this can get community organizing groups in place at the table before important decisions are made. Too many times we're on the table and not at the table making the decisions, right? We're getting picked apart and eaten up and devoured because we have not fought to get at the table. So the idea is community get a place at the table. And community organizers work with we develop new local leaders to advocate for themselves. So it's always about generating new leaders. If we're just an organization with the same people there, are we growing? Are we investing in other people who are impacted by these issues? So to me, that's the true test of our organizing. How are we investing in developing new people to be in the fight and to advocate for themselves? Next slide. So we're a faith-based organization, and we work with congregations and through congregations that connect with the community. So why congregation-centered organizing is at the heart for us. Organizing is a belief that we and our values are poorly or inadequately represented in the policies or practices of government in our society. If you believe that statement, take your little reaction button and make a gesture. Do you believe that? It could be a heart, it could be a thumbs up, it could be, I want you to respond. I know we're on Zoom, but you got to respond. We're in this. Oh, there you go. Thank you. I want to know you're listening and you're not cooking dinner or breakfast, or I want to know that you're reading a book, but I want you to engage with me for a minute, right? Because this is an invitation. Thank you. So we are not confident that they will change without intentional intervention on the part of people of faith putting their faith into action. So that's the premise about why Moses is why we exist and why other organizations like people like Reverend Ross, because she's exercised her values right in the community around the impact of solar. I have a comment about that as well. Next slide. So our theory of change in terms of building power that transforms is that one, we want to focus on building a base, right? We want to build a sustainable base. And so part of that is investing in leaders, training them, investing in resources, building partnerships and coalitions, right? We want to build a sustainable, powerful base that can confront power. Then we want to demonstrate our power, right? While we take people into action, we do act. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. We do actions. We work on issues, we define those issues, and there's a process how we get to how we identify the issues, and we build out these campaigns, right? And that's how we demonstrate what kind of power we have. If we want to go and get a stop sign taken down, we might need 5 people to go down to city, county, right? We might need something, but if we want to take on DTE Energy, who's not investing solar, who don't want to invest solar in our right, Reverend Ross, they don't want communities that have solar farms. Every other state around, every other state in Michigan, in the country allows it, but somehow Michigan doesn't allow that. Why is that, right? So, so that means we want to go against a big corporation. We need to build a lot of power, right? So that's what we're talking about power analysis. How much power do we need to confront the power that has a change that we want to make? Okay, next slide. Oh, keep going. I'm sorry. I have this, the animation is in here. Keep going, Aisha. Just keep it moving real quick. Oh, so yeah, keep it going, keep it going. So we talk about power. I think powerlessness is when we talk about the health impacts, especially on health equity, people who are don't have power are unhealthy, right? Because they have no faith that they can actually do something about what's impacting them. I think it's a health issue. So people who are powerless is a health issue in our communities, right? Power, I want us to be comfortable with the word power. Power is neutral. It's not bad or good. It depends on who has it. There's some people who've done good with power, and there's some people who've done some bad things with power. But the idea is that we want to have power ourselves for our communities, right? It's not given, it's claimed, or we say taken, right? It's a product of it's being in relationship with each other. It's actually working. It's working on compromise and understanding other person's self-interest. So we want to be allies and friends with people in power. There are some good people who hold powerful positions, and we got to be in relationship with them, right? And we want to be able to negotiate and actually create the kind of change we want to see, right? Power is most effective when it's focused and channeled. So we don't want it all over the place. If we talk about one particular thing, we want to do that. We're talking about getting solar access to communities of color. That's a focus we want to fight for, right? Bless you. Ooh, bless you. So communities will have strong relationships with one another and more powerful than communities where relationships are fragmented. So building community is a foundation of how we begin to build power, and it's focused on relationships with each other. We call it self-interest, right? I understand your self-interest of what you want. You understand what I want, and how do we work together to get what we want together? Because we all come at the issue in very different ways. We have different experiences in our lives. So I might want transportation to get downtown to go to a ball game, or this person might want transportation to go to school or go to work, right? But the issue is we both want transportation, but might have different issues. Next slide. I'm doing this real quick. Keep going, keep going, keep going. So we all have faith and values, right? We need power to act on our values. Oops, go back. We need power to act on our values. Go back a slide. And then the sources of that power are organized people and organized money. Sometimes we don't have money, but we definitely can organize people, right? Okay, next slide. So when we actually look at organizing, we look at how we find hooks or handles to engage community members. You know, people are not monolithic. People are trying to survive, they're struggling, but they have issues, they have pain, they have things that are important to them. So we got to find where they are, right? They meet community members where they are and focus on issues that are concerned of the community. It could be health, it could be employment, it could be just safe in the neighborhoods. Adequate housing is a big issue right now. Education, access to quality education can be effective hooks to engaging residents and decisions on how they impact their lives. So how do we find those hooks? How do we engage people? Next slide. Next slide. She got the hardest job, but she's got to stay on top. Next slide. Well, while she's doing that, I'm going to go to the next slide on my computer. So thank you. So the organizing process is, and I'm just, this is all these pieces I'm giving to you are actually week-long. We have a week-long training happening next week. We unpack this. We actually, it's way we actually, that's okay. And we just get people to understand how they become leaders and actually impact change they need, right? So it starts with somebody who needs something. We listen to them. We go out and do one-on-ones. We find out what people care about. So there's a whole listening. We believe in listening. We want to understand where people are before we do anything. I don't believe people should go into community and just start executing an agenda without listening to the concerns of the people who are impacted or who are living in that community, right? And then we come back and we say, what do we hear? Like, what do people care about? I remember my first year in organizing, I was on Chicago, Our Lady Gate of Heaven Church, and we were out, we said, we know there's drugs, there's prostitution on Plymouth, and we know there's drug houses and all this stuff. So then we decided to knock on doors and listen to people. And we were shocked. We listened to 600 households, that time. We were shocked to hear say, oh, they cared about the speeding that was going on in the neighborhood while the kids were going to school. We didn't even know that was the issue until we heard from them. And so then we realized there were 3 schools and it was loaded with kids, right? And so we began to cut that issue based on what we heard from people. So that's what we call a groupthink issue cut. What did we hear? How do we cut the issue? And then we make the demand. And then we went after the people who made it, so we went to the Michigan State Police, went to the Detroit Police Department, we went to the Wayne County Sheriff. All we wanted is police to come in and execute what they're supposed to do. So anyway, we demanded the change, and we actually got that where people can see the actual change that we were asking. Next slide. Okay, you can keep going real quick. So I talked about one-on-one. There's various ways of doing one-on-one, sitting down, listening to people. You know, it's an unnatural. Sometimes we don't take the time to listen to what people care about. People have many things impacting them. And so we want to be able to, one, build a relationship with them. People love to tell their story. People want to be heard. And so we want to build that relationship based on that. We want to uncover their self-interest, what's their passion, where they're angry, where's the pain for them, right? And then in that conversation, and I know that happened to me quite a bit, in that conversation, the person who is being listened to begins to get clarity about their own lives. That's amazing. I mean, it's hard to, but when you sit down, if you start telling your story, you start getting clarity about what you really want, who you really are, and what's available to you, and how you feel about life and things like that. And then you obtain information in terms of what their skill set, what their interest is, et cetera. And then we go back and we proposition them to actually engage. Next slide. So the next, two rules of thumb around listening is you got to be curious about the person. You got to be courageous, right? We're so polite sometimes. People want to tell their story. They'll tell you when they don't want to, when they don't want you to ask a certain question. But if you don't ask a certain question, like if you don't ask, like, so what happened when you were a child that's hard for you, right? Or the death of your mother or your father, or whatever that ACEs, I call it ACEs, or whatever that trauma that might have experienced. People will say they don't, but when they unpack their own, the things that we feel like is a taboo we shouldn't ask about, having the courage to ask a question, you begin to peel back the onion and see who the person is and be able to really proposition them to engage in the issues. Because, if you have an issue with how kind of education you got, and then I hear a story about something that traumatically happened around education, well, we're working on education, right? You're pulling their passion. You're not pulling them because the issue is right, because it's the right thing to do. You're pulling them in because they're connecting their values and who they are to the issue. And that's powerful. Okay. And then next slide. I think, is that it? Okay. So you can go through this really quick. I won't read this, but we did a lot of work with public health departments across the state, and we call Michigan Power to Thrive, and we actually created what we call as our calling. So maybe I will read it. Our democratic tradition and our commitment to the principle, our democratic tradition and our commitment to the principles of equity, justice demand that we all have a right and a duty to participate actively in the social, political, and economic decisions that affect our quality of life. We are called to work together for fundamental transformational remedies to social and political forces that undermine democracy, create power, wealth, imbalances, and limit the power of people to achieve well-being. We, as leaders of congregations, health departments, and other institutions and organizations in Michigan, are called to change oppressive structures and conditions that create inequity and adversely affect the quality of our community life. So that's what we came up with as public health and faith-based organizations. I think there's one more slide. And this is, I think it's the Frederick Douglass. No, is this Frederick Douglass? No, one more slide, the next slide. Okay, so the bottom line is, Frederick Douglass in the house, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. My question to you, are you going to be thunder and lightning, right? So just real quick, so Moses believes in coalition building. So we have, we actually, I'll start with the first one we call Defend Black Voters Coalition. And this is about, right now we're faced with the issue of our democracy being oppressed, suppressed, voter suppression, right? There's all this stuff that's happening across the country. So in Michigan, they have a Secure My Vote. So we heard about, people support Black Lives Matters. People don't want to advance voter suppression, and corporations have been very, open about their role and supporting Black Lives Matter. However, money is going to support it, right? So we're just calling that out. We're putting to you. DTE Energy, I'm really angry about this. They want to increase our rates 9%. They don't want to invest solar in communities of color, right? But yeah, you support Black lives, but the very $25 when the floods hit, when the lights were out, well, floods too, but when lights, $25 for them losing their food, that is an insult, right? So we have to confront, if you want it, we're consumers, but yet you treat people differently. So I'll leave it at that. The tax foreclosure justice. So Bernadette is home. She is a phenomenal lawyer. She has brought this campaign and has stuck with it. And now they have been meeting. My calendar has been populated all the last couple of weeks, meeting with city council people around her proposals to actually redo the review committee. I think it's a review committee about people who wants to present hearings for their tax assessments, because people are beginning. First of all, they've been overtaxed, and then getting foreclosed on taxes. They've been overtaxed illegally, right? So she's actually creating this process to really put pressure on the city of Detroit to resolve that, where people, are able to understand what tax assessments are and are able to actually fight, that they don't have to, because they don't have to fight to pay these illegal taxes, and then they have a fair chance to actually have a hearing. So we want to demystify the issue of engaging around changing the language, how they get the information in the mail, so they can actually fight for their houses they've been invested in and paid for all these years, and now taxes that they've been taken away, their house taken away because of taxes. There's also the right to counsel. And I'm a part of that coalition as well. And this is for people who, you heard the last week that rents are doubling, right? Rents are doubling. And so people, are struggling, trying to make ends meet. And sometimes they go into this eviction process and they don't know how to engage. So there are cities that have successfully institute a right to counsel. So if you're going through an eviction, at least you have a right to fight it, or at least to state your case, so that you're just not going to just get put out, right? And then we also have been a part of looking, Obama, he put through this local hiring. We had fought for it when Granholm and others, and then a certain administration came in, and then they banned the local hiring. Now we want to overturn the local hiring. These have effect on people getting jobs locally. These are things that people might not see, but they have a direct impact on our quality of life. So I think I'm going to stop there. I think that was it for now.
Thank you so much, Pancella and Tim and Reverend Ross. You guys all are doing so many great things in the city. I'd like to note that this is meant to be an interactive session, so anybody is free to type a question in the chat, and we'll invite you to ask your question or ask it to our guest. I'm going to do just one round of follow-up with each of you, and then open it up to those who are in the audience. I talked a lot about economic inequality nationally. I'd like you guys to hone in on what it looks like locally. I'm going to start with you, Tim. If you could talk a little bit about historical housing inequity, and then some of the things you're doing in the Newberry project to start making things better.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Housing has always been a challenge in Detroit, right? For probably the last 70 years. Things generally continue to get worse, not better. They are getting better for some folks, but a lot of those folks are not native Detroiters. I mean city proper, right? They may be metropolitan Detroiters, but this is an influx of new people into the city. They're taking advantage, not necessarily in a bad way, but they're accepting an opportunity to live somewhere that wasn't there before. But this is higher income access. You know, I think about it this way. So for folks of lower income, the national accessibility for a mortgage, the percentage of folks who apply for a mortgage to become a homeowner and get accepted is well over 80%. I think it's over 85%. In Detroit, for lower income folks, the percent of being accepted for a mortgage is below 25%. That's a disparity that's astronomical. And when you think about it, I'm even thinking about some of the things that you said, Pansela. One of the ways that you garner power, or have greater influence on power, is by having greater wealth. It's not the only way, but it's one way. And for folks of lower income, how do you, if everything you have has to go to everything you need, how do you grow wealth? You can grow wealth through inheritance, but if you're a legacy family that hasn't had more than it needs, then you're not inheriting anything. You can get it by windfall, but what is that? 0.1% of the population who build wealth through windfall. You can build a business, but that takes investment. But for most of us, middle, average, lower income, the way that we can build wealth is by directing the resource we have to something that creates a return. That's not paying your cell phone bill. That's not paying your electric bill. Paying your bills doesn't give you anything in return from a wealth perspective. You're purchasing a commodity. But the one thing that we have that can influence this is the money that we direct toward our living situation. When we rent, we do not get any wealth inheritance in return. When we buy, and if we're taught to purchase properly and manage that transaction the right way, there is a return of wealth. So specifically for the example, and this is a small sample size. We've done this with 45 people, but we've done it very, very successfully. These are folks who are at or below 60% of area median income. These are folks who are making, households that are making, $45,000, $46,000 a year or less. And they were paying somewhere between $500 and $700 a month in rent. And we've been able to create a platform. We received a major gift from a private donor, and she allowed us to create a proprietary mortgage fund where we could originate a mortgage for a home buyer and give them the opportunity to do something that they couldn't do in the private market. The average buyer that we deal with has a credit score of 600 or less. That's not going to get you in the door with a financial institution. Literally one of the 45 buyers that we've worked with could have actually walked into a financial institution and got a mortgage. And I can get into a whole side tangent of why that is just an atrocity. But we give these folks to own a home. 15-year mortgage. It is fully amortized. They're paying 4.5% in interest, and they get an opportunity to own a home. For these folks, over 15 years, they would have paid $110,000 or more in rent to a landlord based on their existing current living situation. Over that same period of time, they will pay less than $85,000 in principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, their mortgage payment. Even when you factor in the circumstances of routine maintenance and one-time maintenance, larger ticket items, over the course of 15 years, just on a cash-on-cash basis, they're going to save over $8,000. This is real money that can be redirected to something else. That's just the cash on cash. But when you think about it from the wealth building perspective now, that money is invested in an asset that is theirs, that is marketable, that is transferable, and that is tangible. And over that 15-year period, with just modest, 1 or 2% appreciation in the real estate, they're going to build a potential nest egg of almost $90,000 of real wealth. When you go back and look at the original situation that these households were in and where they were directing their money toward rent, at the end of 15 years in a rental situation, they weren't going to have any other nest egg or investment or anything else, right? For the rest of folks who have moderate or higher incomes, an alternative way to build wealth is to redirect your disposable income into investments or opportunities to help supplement what you're doing. But if you're at the end of the scale where everything you have is going toward everything you need to survive, there's no disposable income to create an alternative for wealth. And that is why home ownership for lower income families is so important to building wealth, inheritance for families, and building a legacy. And we've been able to do this out of the 45 mortgages that we've originated. 34 of those mortgages have been African-American families. 11 of those mortgages have been for Hispanic or Latino families. Like I said, every single one of these families is earning less than $46,000 a year. We have had 5 folks over the course of 3.5 years face a delinquency. One of those was serious, but it was due to a COVID employment issue. And we had to step back in and work and restructure that mortgage for those folks. The other 5, simple post-purchase counseling got these folks back on track. So these are 45 folks who could not have walked into a financial institution and got themselves a mortgage, but they all have a mortgage, they all own a home, and 0 have defaulted. So this whole issue of trying to fit in the box and traditional underwriting and determining what is a worthy borrower and what's best for folks just doesn't work on the basic capitalist economic platform. Just because you don't fit in the box doesn't mean that you are not a good candidate for this. And these folks have a very uncommon opportunity to do something great for their families. And where we're keenly interested in this now is expanding this idea across the city of Detroit. This can be duplicated. Does it mean just because we've done 45, we'll never have anybody default? No. That's not true, but I'll give you an example. They've been doing this in Chicago for many, many, many years, over a decade. And their default rate across thousands of loans that they have originated is less than 2.25%, which is comparable to the national mortgage market in general. So we think there is a tremendous opportunity here. We think we have a model and a pattern. We simply need to find a way to scale it. And for folks that would argue that there isn't money available to scale this, the capital is out there. The money doesn't have to be free. It can be an investment on the part of a mortgage fund. So we need to help build an understanding of the importance of this for providing equity for folks who need it.
Wow, thanks so much for sharing that example. Reverend Ross, I'd like to ask you two questions. Hopefully you could combine what was just talked about our two previous speakers. One, what do you think about gentrification as it might exist or be coming in Detroit? And then two, how can you get a community to work together to build the kind of power that Puntel is talking about to fight against that and to keep things, for the community that has been there, as opposed to the people who want to come in and take advantage of the opportunity?
So Trina, you really set me up because I wanted to talk about the question you gave Tim, and now I'm on another question. So I'm going to kind of try to sneak both of these pieces together if I possibly can. So first of all, let me just say that there's a difference between equity and justice. And if we look at this as if we've been given a canoe to sail across the Detroit River, but our canoe has holes in it, simply bailing the water out, trying and hoping and praying that we're going to make it to the other side is an equity issue. But plugging the holes in the boat to ensure that we get to the other side is the justice of this. So when we work on these, and your question to gentrification is, we work in the community land trust space because we believe that stems the tide of gentrification. There's no question about, is there gentrification in Detroit? I mean, it's just overwhelming and tremendous. So we do have to find systems and ways that we can stem that gentrification and support the families that are here to stay here and continue to be here. Because actually they're the heroes of the story. They're the ones that have gone through the worst of what we call death by 1,000 cuts. We've had everything that you can name taken from us and pulled, and we've been deprived in so many areas. So we do have to, and I applaud Tim and the program. Tim and I have had other conversations in the community land trust space about how does that work in terms of protecting and securing the families that are already here. So the best thing for gentrification is to find these systems that Tim is working on, that I'm working on in the community land trust space, that will prevent this gentrification, or at least slow it down. Can we prevent it altogether? No, we can't, because development brings those kinds of things. The more we do on one side to improve, the more opportunities we open up and enable gentrification. We're looking at doing a new housing development very soon, and we're trying hard to put in place the safe stops that will prevent that from being gentrified and will enable it to be for existing residents to take that step up and that move to additional place. So the piece about the equity or inequities that we see around the country, of course, there's no question about it. I mean, redlining has happened as far as digital inclusion, as far as housing, as far as all of these systems that we can name. But we have to find systems that we can have ownership of, because ownership changes the equity position. If we own systems, we change who's at the table, we change who makes the decisions, we change the equity, we change the justice. So that's why the work that we do centers on us owning the systems. We own our own internet, we own our own media outlet, we own the CLT and the housing situation. And here's a secret that I'll tell, I know you guys won't tell anybody else. We already own one utility, which is the internet. And we are working very hard in the past few months to create our own utility to get rid of DTE, at least in the lives of those that we can get rid of DTE. Now, that goes into some secrets that I may not want to let out today, but there are cities around the state who have formed sustainable energy utilities that are strictly meant to be solar systems and geothermal systems, and finding ways that we can create that in a microgrid or a multiple microgrid situation will help us to get rid of this DTE problem. And believe me, I'm going to put all my prayers and all the work that I can do on being able to do something like that. I can't save all of Detroit. I might be able to only save a corner, but at least I'm going to rattle a couple of cages.
Amen. Thank you for sharing that. And we're opening up for questions. So anybody have questions, please share it in the chat or raise your hand. But I just want to have one follow-up for you, Pansela. There's so many people doing so many things in Detroit. And I know you already mentioned 5 campaigns that you're a part of, right? So how do we work together to do some of this as opposed to everybody kind of working in their silos? Because power is really bringing all those people together, as many people as possible working together. How do you do that? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so we partner with a lot of groups that are leading the issue. So we know we align and we support. So whatever we can do in terms of the organizing aspect of it, like how do we get the community to understand what's really happening, right? And then there's some campaigns that we lead ourselves. So I'll use an example like the water equity work. We didn't feel the need to be in that space. There were groups that were already leading that work. Only thing that we want to support the work that was already done, but we also wanted to look at the system. So we had a question about, well, why is this happening? What's the structure of the Great Lakes Water Authority and the bankruptcy and how it played out. So it's not the sexiest thing, going after systems is hard because people are trying to survive, but but I don't want to have a conversation 10 years from now on the same issue. So we got to get at the core of some of these things. And it takes many people who work on many angles of the issue to work together. And how do we kind of launch together at the appropriate time when it's time to pull the trigger on certain things, right? So I know there's like legislation happening in Lansing. We're not leading the work on solar, but I know one of our churches have been engaged with DTE about a solar farm that was right next to it, but they had no benefits from it. So they're angry. So how do we change some of the policies that shouldn't even be an issue, that if people want to have that right? So it's really about, one, building relationships, understanding how we function as community groups, right? And then where is the alignment? So even around our corporate accountability campaign, there are 5 groups intentionally designed as Black-led groups because we want to make sure we were leading the campaign, right? But we all have multiple issues. So how do we build relationships with each other? How do we understand each other? How do we understand how we work? And how do we understand? I was a part of a coalition one time. It was around the food stuff. And I remember, and everybody had a different angle. And I remember a question came to the table and said, look, if you're going to throw us under the bus, at least give us a heads up. So as coalition, sometimes we pull the trigger and might not agree, right? And so all we care about is like, if this is, and we know this is important to you, but if you're going to throw us under the bus with a legislator, just give us a heads up so we can figure out how to pivot. This is just being transparent. It's about understanding each other's work. It's about getting to know each other. No permanent enemies, no permanent friends. We're friends here. We might not be so much friends over here, right? And that includes politicians. So it's just about negotiation, relationships, and understanding the world of what power really means. I'm sorry if I'm yelling. I feel like I have to yell through the computer. I don't know. I'm talking too loud.
You're fine. You sound just fine.
Okay.
So Sonia and team, let me know if there's any questions. I can keep on going, but I want to make sure if anyone in the audience has a question, that you have a chance to talk about it. So we've talked about utility systems. We talked about mortgage systems. We talked about water systems. Are there other systems that don't work for low to moderate income families in Detroit that you guys?
Education.
Okay, what are you doing in education, Pansela?
Well, so there's another coalition. We're part with NEWCC, and so we're looking at the funding. So so this is really interesting because we're working on a revenue tax, fair tax campaign, a revenue campaign. We wanted to launch it in 2020 before the pandemic, but because the pandemic happened, we weren't able to move anything on the ballot initiative. But it's about funding and resources. Everything costs money, right? And we got to get into spaces where we can actually leverage and bring the resources where we want it. So that was why we're getting money for education in terms of, it also, I think water was another issue. It's like putting more money where infrastructure for water, as well as education. These are infrastructures, education, all these are infrastructures we're talking about. So I think everything that's come out of DC when infrastructure goes to everything, health equity, education, all those things. So there's a lot of coalitions around a lot of infrastructures.
Actually, I want to follow up on that. So given that there are federal dollars that came through ARPA, the American Rescue Plan, and this infrastructure bill, what are some things you guys have been doing to make sure that that funding that comes from the federal government through the state gets to the people who need it in Detroit? Reverend Ross or Tim, do you guys have thoughts about what you've been doing in that arena?
So we have been meeting with folks from the Lieutenant Governor's office, as well as people out of Connect Michigan, to make sure that the dollars that are coming in through digital inclusion or digital equity get dispersed, not just to the major infrastructure or the big players, but to community level or community grassroots situations that have solutions or particular interest in digital inclusion, digital justice. That first of all has involved with praying and hoping that the local legislation, the state legislation, will seat an Office of Inclusion or Digital Equity so that we have representation, or we have a place that that work can be funneled through. And Michigan currently is the only state that hasn't seated an actual Office of Digital Inclusion. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We know that the funds are starting to come in May, we understand, and we need to have that happen so that we can, as grassroots organizations, work with them to make sure that that equity gets out to community as well.
Yeah, I think for us, it's the struggle of trying to direct our advocacy toward the government agencies to think innovatively about the resources that they're getting. The application of federal dollars to the development of rental housing is the largest share of funds that comes into the community development world. Always has been historically and probably always will be. One example is both at the state and the city level, a desire to push some of the new federal resource toward down payment assistance, which is great because it's home ownership centered. There's absolutely a demonstrated need for that. But if we go back to my previous conversation, and you're basically saying that 3 in 4 people eligible for the DPA can't acquire a mortgage to buy the house, then where's the equity in that? The resources, in some sense, fallow at that point because the applicant or the acquirer of the DPA can't satisfy the other end of the equation. So unless we broaden our thinking and start thinking more innovatively about how we apply those dollars, and then the other piece for us, and we have had some traction with this with the city of Detroit, is getting an application of those funds towards minor and major home repair. A lot of what we talk about in the community development space, I'm guilty of this myself, is talking about new things, new rental housing, new home ownership, new this, new that. But that doesn't always go far enough to address the needs of folks, legacy Detroiters who are embedded in communities, who have been there for years, who have their own set of needs, and have a right and a desire to participate in the improvements that are going on in a community. And minor major home repair has really not been a tangible subject matter in this city for over 10 years.
So Trina, can I add a couple? I know Panseli gave you a pretty extensive list of infrastructure inequities and opportunities. Could we add access to capital for small business and for minority business? I think that and to Tim's point, there's a lot of small developers that want to do that rehab, that want to be in that space, and they don't have access to the capital that it's needed to. Yet we hear about billions of dollars in the reinvestment acts and things like that. It just never seems to filter down to the level of folks that we need to get access to those kinds of things. So access to capital is a really important and critical one of those inequities that we see, in addition to the infrastructures that that Poncella talked about.
Excellent, excellent. Poncella, I know you said you didn't know a lot about this, but if you could say a little bit more about what local hiring means or what hasn't been happening, maybe not
Yeah.
the particular details, but what hasn't been happening and who's getting left out.
Yeah. So, you know, to Reverend Ross's point too, I want to just emphasize on the small business or the small minority contractors that they also, how do we build their capacity to compete with the contracts, and how they actually can hire local within the community. So how do we build them in a way that they actually are the job providers? I just say that there. So there was, this is a legal thing, and I can send anybody who wants to look at legal, I can send you the language around that. But there was where we actually fought, even when Granholm was in office, that you can actually train people, and there's preference over local hiring. I remember, you know, there was the federal governments came in to actually guide contracts to actually big contractors to actually make sure they would infuse local hiring and the outreach and all this kind of stuff. But then something happened under another administration where it was removed. It was stopped. Right. It wasn't like you had to do that anymore in the local municipalities. So now we're wanting to fight even at this moment because of this called infrastructure work that the current administration is trying to push. How do we make sure that there is teeth, that there is local hiring once again in our local community? So there is some language around that that would enable people to actually at least make sure they were meeting requirements of hiring locally. You know, hiring in the municipalities and local around transportation, infrastructure type jobs, right? There's a lot of jobs being developed around GLEWA and the water infrastructure, right? There's all these jobs, there's green infrastructure jobs, there's all these things, these systems that are receiving federal dollars that they are required to hire locally. That has been removed out of legislation. We want it back.
Great, thank you. Okay, team, do we have any questions in the chat? I hope I'm not missing anything. But if not, we really only have 4 or 5 more minutes anyway. So if you guys have any closing comments you want to make, always know that if there's something you forgot about or want to get more detail on, we can send it when we send out the summary of this event. So any websites or campaigns or information you want to share, we can share with those who participated. But I'll give you each a chance to make a closing statement, and then we will wind down. Start with.
I think I'll just go. I think I said a lot. If you're interested in doing some work, we're always looking for people to volunteer who want to come in or even pay to actually help. I love smart people who can dive into this policy stuff to help us educate and actually build people's intellectual capacity around these issues that are impacting their lives every day. So I welcome you. That's my final statement. So if you're interested in, partnering with us and just doing a little work, Sonia knows I'm trying to get somebody here to help.
Thank you.
So, and I'll go next and make Tim go last. It's always great to hear Poncella because I believe in advocacy so strongly, but I also believe in this equitable systems change piece, that we have to have ownership of these projects, of these systems, and that way we get our seat. We're not on the table, as Poncella says, we're at the table in a major and significant way. So I would encourage people to uplift the organizations, especially remembering that nonprofits are operating a lot on funding from foundations who can change their flavor every other month if they, that's the way they move. So support the organizations that are working in these systems and in this work, remembering that equity and justice are 2 different things. We're working toward justice in everything. And in the equity piece, we're bailing water and we need help in doing those kinds of things. But if you don't know these systems exist, if you don't know these works exist, then you're not able adequately to support and to lift up that work.
You get the last word, Tim.
I'll try and make it meaningful. For me, the important thing in building home ownership among lower income households is helping the public understand that it's not a giveaway program. This is a critical factor of injustice that has happened over a number of years. And the financial institutions, they have proven that they don't have the ability to help solve the issue. The reasons are plentiful. I won't get into all of them. Bless their hearts, some of them try, but the programs just do not go deep enough and are not flexible enough to address the needs of the borrowers that we're talking about. This is not just simply an issue of giving somebody something for the sake of giving them something. This is a critical issue to help uplift and build community and build wealth, specifically for minority households. And there is a way to get it done. It is economically responsible. And it's just practically necessary for us to get on board to do this. The capital is out there. And like I say, it's not a giveaway program on the part of the capital providers or on part of an organization like ours that would provide a mortgage. There's responsibility on both ends, but the positive benefits on the end for everybody involved are immeasurable.
Well, thank you all, Pancella, Reverend Ross, Tim Thurland, for joining us today and having this rich conversation. Thank you for all you do for Metro Detroiters and those who are low to moderate income families. Remember to stay on for a second for the class, but we're going to close out our webinar. But I'd like to just let you know that if you want to see any past discussion, you can go to our website, and I think we're putting all this in the chat, so you can see where to go to find the past discussions. And in about a week or so, this one will be on that site. Next month, on April 7th, we'll be talking about social justice through the arts. So we'll have another good conversation, and here's the link to register for that. So if you guys can put that in the chat, please. Thank you very much. But with that, we will say goodbye. You can sign off now, and hopefully we'll see you guys next month. But Pancella, Reverend Ross, and Tim, stay for a few minutes. Thank you so very much. You're getting great kudos in the chat. Thanking you for your great comments.
Thanks, everyone. And if students of the Engaged Community class could just stay on for a few minutes, and panelists.